Bam! Got it to work.
Um, Hi, Eugene. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Hey, my
Give me one
apologies
second.
to you and everybody who's viewing. First Facebook Live I've ever done. I'm on Zoom all the time. And yeah, tech issues. Welcome to our new world. Good to be here, Eugene.
No, Lewis, no problem. I honestly, like, I always mess up these lives myself, like pretty much every other live, you know?
Damn.
Even now that I've done it so many times, I still manage to mess something up. Usually one of my former clients, which is like an IT guy, is on these lives too. And he walks me through it, ironically. You know, he's like, oh, you need to do this and you need to do this and it'll work. But he's not here today. He's on a trip. So
Oh,
obviously
that
I'm
sucks.
falling apart here in the matrix, you
Yeah,
know?
and then you sent me the message that I can't do it from my laptop. I got to get on the phone. I'm like, oh, shit. Let me go get the phone. Anyway,
I
good to be here, man.
Yeah, I totally forgot to mention that part too. I only found that out like, I don't know, like 4 lives ago or 5 lives ago that you can't even do it from a desktop. Like you have to do it from your actual smartphone. But anyways, it's good to see you. It's been probably like 10 years or so. I don't know how long it's been, but probably
Not quite
since,
that long, man. Probably,
no?
probably four. No, we last saw each other when we ended our last session together, which I have a photo of. That was in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 4 years.
Okay. I thought it was way before then. This whole entire life before you were coming on, I'm like, oh, I haven't seen him in 10 years. I spaced out. Maybe it was like close to
Life
5 years.
happens.
Maybe
Life
5 years,
happens. We're
four,
thinking
four or
five.
5 years.
Five
Okay.
is close. Yeah, yeah, not 10.
Yeah, but I was giving the listeners like a little bit of background of your story, how you're like already fairly actually health conscious even
Yeah.
before coming into me, and but you're just having like some issues in terms of developing your body aesthetically the way you wanted to, et cetera, et cetera. And I was telling him the most important thing that a lot of people struggle with is actually not losing the weight, but finding methods of how to keep the weight off long term. And I was telling them, you know, like 80 to 90% of people that end up losing any amount of weight tend to regain it within 2 to 3 years of losing that weight, if not like an extra 5 pounds all the time. And the cyclical pattern kind of constantly repeats itself throughout the person's entire life, which, in my opinion, from my observation, is simply because the person never changed the environment that they're in before they started the program. So they typically just focus on eating better, working out better, but never really getting to the etiology of why that weight gain happened, which is most often never the result of just not eating well and not working out enough. Usually, not eating well and not working out enough is the result of being in an important environment and having a belief system that facilitates that environment, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to let you take over and tell your story, like give some background even before we started.
Yeah.
I know you're just very health conscious a lot of time. You're very health conscious as well. And you guys got to listen to this guy because you guys have to listen. You guys, he's not like a PhD in whatever, this and that, but hey, he's figured out a way to actually stay healthy in the real world where 9 out of 10 people you run into are full of obesity and disease, like mental and physical pain. But he figured out how to do it, you know? So you guys have to listen to people like this, examples of people that make it work, that still have a career and stuff of that sort. So go ahead, Lewis,
Yeah,
take it
thank you.
over, man, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, appreciate it. First of all, I'm just sharing my story. What worked for me may work for other people. Take it and run with it. May not work for other people. This is my story, my experience, and so that's wanted to share. That's where I'm coming from. Um, Let me go way back to when I was, and I say way back. Let me state this now. Let me get it out of the gate. I just turned 60 years old a week ago today, actually yesterday. So I'm 60. I'm entering a new stage of my life. I'm in perfect health. Now, let me back up. When I was 18, I came into contact. I'm from Southern California. I was living in Laguna Beach, Orange County. For those of you that aren't familiar with that part of the world, we're exposed to a lot of different cultures. We're exposed to a lot of different thoughts and philosophies. Oftentimes, you've heard people say California is full of fruits and nuts. Okay, well, if that's how you describe it, whatever. But I was exposed to a lot of different things, different ideas. One of those ideas was health. Health, different, a healthy lifestyle. And I started learning that all these foods that I had been fed all my life were not healthy for me. So at 18, I decided I'm going to live a healthy lifestyle. I quit smoking cigarettes, which I had started smoking at 12. This is back in the 70s. Everybody smoked. All my parents smoked. Everybody smoked. I smoked. I quit smoking at age 18, 19. Decided to go on a big health, what they would call a health, what anyone would call a health kick, I guess you could say. It's a fad. It's a trend. It's something you're doing right now. I was lucky enough to have a best friend, my best friend at the time, a guy named Carl. We both decided to do it together. So I will say, as I look back, it's an added help when you got someone else who's with you and they go, let's do this. All right. And then you support each other. So he was my buddy. He was my bro. We both decided to do this, and we became what now I know as fishitarians. We stopped eating all red meat. I stopped eating at Wendy's and McDonald's and all the fast foods. And we just started, now we're in Southern California, we started fishing for ourselves, eating our own fresh fish, and just eating lots of fruits and vegetables. And I was still in contact, always in contact with people who I would say are a generation older than me, call them old hippies if you want, whatever, who helped me with this, who helped me understand all about organic foods and just a natural way of living and living with nature in sync and in unison with nature and not going against it, all that, right? I started exercising more. I was young, okay, so I didn't really need to, but I was always been very active. Long story short, I became a strict vegetarian. Not a vegan, but I stopped eating meat, fish, and eggs, and have been a vegetarian since then, since I was 21. So at 21, I decided no more meat. Now, this is where the tricky part happens, because in those days, we thought, okay, vegetarian, that's healthy, or healthier at least. You'll lose weight, you'll be fit, and all of that. What I didn't realize is it's not healthy to live as a vegetarian on chips and salsa. Mm-hmm. So there was that. I had to learn new ways of eating, etc., to maintain my health. I stayed away from doctors. I made a conscious decision at 21. I'm not going to any doctors. And I started interfacing and working with holistic health practitioners. One doctor in particular, Dr. Gahn, used to be in Orange County. He told me one thing that stayed with me. I'll never forget it. I was only 20, probably 23. Don't make the body wrong. Your body has its own innate wisdom. Listen to it. Let it do its thing. Let it cleanse. Sweat. Don't stop the sweat. Stop wearing deodorant. Why are you wearing antiperspirant? Your body needs sweat. All these little things like this, right? So I'm on this roll. Great. I'm on a roll. I'm feeling good. I'm healthy. I'm energetic. I'm not seeing any doctors. I'm feeling great. Speed up the film. I'm in my 40s. I start noticing this thing called a gut. Okay? Start noticing the overhang on my pants. I started noticing shirts getting tighter. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I let it ride because in my mind I thought, I still look good. I'm still getting looks. I'm still healthy. I'm still all right. Speed up the film a little more. I'm leaving out a lot of details that don't really matter to this conversation, but I want to bring it up to almost the present, to where I went to live and work in India for 2 years. I worked at Microsoft in India, and I was in good shape there. I was belonging to the gym at Microsoft there. I was in great shape. When I left India, I brought with me a bunch of clothes that I had bought there. So for those of you who don't know, you can buy some really cool clothes for really cheap in other parts of the world, which I did. Hand-tailored, suits and jackets and all the really nice party jackets. I'm into that sort of thing. I get back to the United States in July. From July to December, this is of 2016, I guess I got off the health bandwagon truck. I was under a lot of stress. I was moving back to the United States. I started eating what I would call comfort food, even as a vegetarian. Just started eating a lot of carbohydrates, lots of breads and pastas and quesadillas and all that stuff. Next thing you know, 6 months later, I come home in July. This is 2017. 6 months later, in December, it's time to go to our annual work party. I had just joined this company. I wanted to impress. I wanted to look good. I wanted to look sharp. So I start to try on those clothes that I brought with me from India, and guess what? Jacket doesn't fit. Pants won't even close shut. I'm living with my sister at the time in Dana Point. I grab her scale out of the bathroom. I stand on it, and it indicates I'm about 108, close to 185 pounds, and I knew I should only weigh about 160. Mm-hmm. So I said to myself and my sister, I think your scale's broken. She goes, well, we'll order another one.
It's all muscle, Louis.
Yeah, or it's like
for you, it's all muscle. That's why the scale was going up, man.
I couldn't believe it, man. I'm like, something's wrong here. So I ordered a new scale. 2 days later, Amazon delivers it. I step on it, and guess what it says? Like 183 pounds. In that moment, and this is a point I'm going to make a little bit later, how emotions will actually benefit us in some ways, to move us to get off our asses and do something. I'll never forget in that moment when I stood on the scale in the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror and I said to myself, oh, hell no, we're not doing this. Absolutely not. I'm not buying a new wardrobe. Are you fucking kidding me? Excuse my language. Are you kidding me? I started looking for personal trainers. And there's a shit ton of them out there, Eugene. You know that. I went by recommendations and I started honing in on 2 or 3. You were one of them. I actually don't remember how I got word of you, but I watched a YouTube video that you had in those days, this 5 years ago. And you had I think you had a photo or a picture of a client you were about to work with. And you were so excited about it. And with a pencil, you were drawing on how you were going to help him sculpt him, you know, through the work you were going to do. And you were drawing with a pencil. And I was listening to the way you were talking, and I knew you knew your shit. I knew that you had some education to back this up. And I also felt your passion. And I'm like, okay, this is the guy. This is the guy. I always go with my intuition. That's how I go. I mean, rationally, I think things out for sure, but my intuition comes into play a lot. My intuition told me this is the guy you need to work with. Set an appointment with you, and I remember when I went to see you, you're like, okay, you're driving a half an hour from Dana Point to Irvine to come and work with me? Are you sure you want to do this? I'm absolutely sure I want to do this. Now, for the listeners, this is where I think it can become difficult for some people, and even me. I had to make time, carve time out of my day to go see the trainer. You put me on a whole different eating program, counting all the stuff that we have to count and calories and I forgot what the word is, but I'm thinking of it right now. The things you count, you know what I'm talking about. And that takes, number 1, commitment. Number 2, it takes dedication. Number 3, it takes accountability to oneself, to stick to one's goals and to stick to one's plan. And it wasn't easy. Now, one thing I didn't mention to the listeners, at this time that I started to work with you, I was traveling. Pandemic hadn't hit yet. I was traveling somewhere every single week, just about. Maybe a week went by that I didn't travel, but for the most part, I was all over the United States and even sometimes Mexico, okay? So then there was that challenge that you had to work with me on. Like, you know, I'm not going to be able to be weighing things out in my kitchen every day. I'm going to be eating in gross hotel restaurants and any place I can find something to eat. How do I do this? I figured it out, man. I got a plan for myself, and I won't go into the details about what I did. Everyone will have their own plan, but I made it work. Within 3 months, you got me down to 158 pounds. Now, let me back up for everyone listening. My goal was not to be a bodybuilder. My goal was not to, to have this really awesome, gorgeous body, although that's great. My goal was to look good, slim down, fit into my sexy clothes that I bought in India, and have heads still turn, right? And not have that gut looking out of me, and to look trim and fit. And you helped me get there. You helped me, but the work was me. I had to be dedicated to it. I had to and I guess this will now lead into the changing of your environment and the changing of patterns and habits that we had. Even though I thought I was healthy, I was a vegetarian, all that stuff for all those years, I had to reassess everything and say, okay, I'm older now. My body's changed. It needs different things. It needs a different kind of exercise. It needs a different kind of sleep pattern. All of these things I had to take into consideration and make those changes. I've been talking a lot. I'm going to pause there, Eugene. Are there any questions or any thoughts you want to kind of move the direction in, or should I continue going? I just want to pause for a moment.
Lewis, go, man. This is all about you. I'm going to try to shoot some questions here and there. I'm kind of making a small list, but just tell your story, man. So I like interviewing people. Like there's an old saying, knowledge isn't power. Applied knowledge is power. And I like interviewing people that make it happen in the real world instead of these kind of coffee shop talk guys that are like, they sound really fancy in the coffee shop or doing lectures in some university, but then they never could make it happen in the real world, you know?
Yeah. So I'm a trainer. I'm a communications trainer. I train communications. I train people on how to communicate more effectively in various ways, okay? And I always tell people when I train, after the training is over, okay, great, you've learned all this stuff. I've given you some tools on how to improve your communication. So what? You can sit on your asses and do nothing with it, or it's up to you now to start doing it and see how it improves your results. I look at it the same way here. You gave me some support, but I had to do the work. Did I want to drive to Irvine at 12 noon in the middle of my workday? Hell no. Did I want to try to change my whole eating habits. And then there comes into play, and I'm sure you know this, and some of your listeners are aware of this. Who are we hanging out with? Who's our significant others? Who are we dating? Romantic partners. And they want to go out to eat, they want to have wine, and they want to have all the stuff that I have made a decision I'm not going to eat. That's a challenge. So I had to work through that. Like, how do I engage in the no thank you, but no thank you, and then you offend people. And then from a Latin American culture where I come from, you tell people you're not going to eat and have a glass of wine. So my dad, I didn't want to have a glass of wine with him. He got pissed off because that's what we used to do. So it's tricky, and it's dedication and accountability to myself. I know what my goal is. My goal is I want to remain as healthy as possible through old age. I don't want to see any doctors. I don't want to be under any medication, any prescriptions, any of that, as long as possible. So I have to keep reminding myself that. Not only that, I'm going off in tangents right now. Not only that, I'm grateful to all the people in my life, family members and others, who have shown me how I don't want to end up.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's important.
I'm like, I'm not doing that. Oh, now I got high blood pressure, so doctor put me on this, and then there's the diabetes, it's creeping up, and so I take these pills for pre-diabetes. Go ahead, have your Diet Coke, have your chips. You know, I decided once again, I did it when I was 19, 20, and I did it again recently after seeing you. No, I got to reset. It's like a rebooting. Okay, what were my goals again? Yeah, now situations are a little different. How do I get there? I make adjustments in my sleep and my exercise, etc. I remember you telling me when I had that gut, when I came in 23, 25 pounds overweight or whatever it was, I was running. I was running like 7 miles a day on the treadmill, on the beach, running. And you told me, stop running, man. You're going to tire yourself out. You're going to get really tired. And you're not really going to see any effects. And I'm like, you know what? You're absolutely right. You're absolutely
right. You're like, oh, thank God. I didn't like running anyways. You know?
Yeah, exactly. I don't run.
Yeah.
I do other things. That doesn't mean I sit still, but I don't run. Yes. Anyway, so let me kind of go back. Everything was running along smoothly. I was in the best shape I could say that I probably ever been in after seeing you, after leaving you in whatever month that was, whatever year that was, 4 years ago. And I maintained it. I stayed dedicated. Then the pandemic happened. That shifted everything for everybody. We know that, okay? Suddenly I couldn't go to gyms. Gyms were closed. Suddenly it's like, oh God, what do I do? And then I think you recommended to do the ropes or whatever. One time I bought them and I'm like, nah, I'm not into that. It's not working for me. I wound up just riding my bike all the time to do what I could to kind of stay in shape. Once the gyms opened again, I started going back to the gym a little bit. Now I live here in Mexico. So let me bring it up to speed now. I've made conscious choices in my life that were not always easy. I'm saying this in hopes that some of the listeners in the audience here maybe are faced with the same thing and maybe can take some value, you know, from what I've done. Not everybody can quit their jobs and get up and move, but I was fortunate enough that when the pandemic hit, our company became a full-fledged 100% virtual company. I can live in any one of these 4 time zones, Pacific through Eastern or in between, okay? I decided at that point, I need to live where the weather suits my health the best, if that makes sense, right? Where do I feel the healthiest and the best at my optimum? And that is in a warm climate. Why a warm climate? Because I sweat a lot, because I don't need to sleep that much. My body wants lighter foods. When I'm in a colder climate, and people will laugh at this, but Southern California has a cold climate to me in the wintertime. You can't surf. Ocean's cold. It gets, gosh, it'll drop down to 50 degrees at night sometimes. I say that tongue in cheek. It wasn't working for me, and I found that the pattern I was falling into was when the weather gets cold, I want to eat heavier, I get more lazy, I don't feel, and so I made the decision, okay, I'm going to move to a hot tropical place where I can work from and where I can optimize my health. So that's what I did last October. I moved to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where I'm at now. I'm still traveling. I got to go to Chicago in 2 weeks, but I'm 5 minutes walk to the beach. I have a bike that's a game changer for me because I ride my bike at least 8 to 10 miles every day. I have a gym here that I work out at, and I'm eating lighter because it's freaking hot here. It's hot in It's 85 degrees every day, and I sweat a lot. I'm feeling like I'm in an optimal zone. I weighed in this morning at 161. I left you at 158. All right, a little bit, but I've also learned from you, don't get so fixated on that weight every day. It could be water, could be this or that, but my range is still within 158 to 162, 163. I don't know what my body fat is. I know I feel good. I know I have energy. I know I look good. I turned 60. I had a full-fledged, I said I don't go to doctors, but I have one doctor that I like to just check my blood and see what's going on, because I do want to know. He says, keep doing what you're doing, man. All your blood work, everything out is great. I just turned 60 years old, and I can say I know a lot of other people my age that are not in the same health condition that I'm in. I'll pause there.
Yeah, well, I can name like pretty much the majority of 20-year-olds these days that aren't in the same condition you are, unfortunately. So yeah, you mentioned like a whole bunch of important topics that I would like to touch on. I mean, first and foremost, you mentioned like who you surround yourself with is huge. And I think that is a pretty big part, because, you know, you are the average of about the 5 people you hang out with on a consistent basis.
That's right.
And of course, like I do find this is one of the topics that isn't even addressed in most transformation programs, is completely neglected, but it's super important, you know, because if you keep hanging out with people that aren't health conscious, you know, they like to go eat out or stuff of that sort, or they like to go drink every weekend, that's going to kind of weigh you down. Even if you don't think it's happening at a conscious level, it will happen at an unconscious level. Because I guarantee, like for the listeners, you hang out with like only people like me and Lewis, for example, even if you're not as fit as us, like for example, you will be way more fit than you think, just because of the indirect communication, the little tips you'll always pick up by talking to us and by observing like what we're doing, and you're going to pick up those habits as well and want to increase your standards in that area of life as well. And the funny thing you mentioned, you know, about, not wanting to drink with your dad and your dad getting upset. I see this a lot, especially on holidays. People, you know, they get around the table and they encourage each other to not eat the best food in general, you know, not eat the best food and also drink. And while they're doing that, they're also complaining about their health issues that are a byproduct and symptom of the very food they're encouraging their family members to continue to eat. And I see that as and it's done unconsciously oftentimes, just totally unconscious and under the radar. And that just kind of talks into, or goes into like a little bit of hints of how unconscious like pathological behavior is in kind of especially in mainstream America these days. I mean, I quoted a few studies, but one of the studies you'll find at PubMed.gov, which you can find on various of my other podcasts, like 9 out of 10 American adults right now are metabolically unhealthy, 90%. Yeah. And the standards on this study were like, basically, like, is your heartbeat still beating? Okay, cool. You're metabolically healthy. And 9 out of 10 people failed even that, you know? It's not like they had like these Olympic level standards of like metabolic health. It was just super baseline, super normal, nothing like extraordinary. And yet 90% of people failed that. So, I mean, clearly like something's not working. And I feel like a lot of times, one of the things is not working is the whole entire healthcare industry is because of, I feel, a little bit of laziness and because of financial incentive, just totally stuck on these symptom management models of healthcare. Yeah. Oh, you have high blood pressure? Here's some medication. Don't worry about, you know, what is high blood pressure? It's hypertension. It's too much tension. Don't worry about decreasing the tension in your life. Just here, take this medication. And ironically, a lot of people, what they don't understand is a lot of these medical drugs, and I like to call them drugs because that is what they are. It's kind of masked as medicine, but really it's just a drug, oftentimes with a lot of very harmful side effects. And the problem is, I mean, talking about it in just normal street language here that a lot of people can understand. Imagine, Lewis, if you had like, if we were walking on the beach, you know, in Mexico, and you had a rock stuck inside your shoe and it was causing you pain. Imagine if I told you like, hey, don't take that rock out, just take these painkillers and continue to walk with that rock inside your shoe. Like, how stupid would I sound? And that's exactly kind of, for the outside of emergency medicine, of course, that's exactly how the symptom management medical model works. Oh, you got this issue? Don't worry about getting to the etiology and root cause, which is literally the only way you can actually solve the issue is through a behavioral change. Just here, take this medication. But the problem with that model is the same belief system that led to this high blood pressure is the same belief system that's going to lead to a myriad of other health issues throughout a person's life. And that
Right.
medicine, presuming it, those drugs, presuming that it actually does cure you of something, which it doesn't cure or prevent anything. Uh, how is it going to help you with all those other things? Are you just going to have to take medications for those, that, and then you end up like that? And I'm sure you have a few friends that are 40, 50, and they have like 12 medications by now that they have to take, half of which are just to counter the side effects of the main medications that are meant to use. And they look worse and feel worse than they've ever felt, you know? And they're like,
Dan, and I know you probably don't have an answer to it, but let me just share, like, where I'm confused is, look, when I was 20 years old, I remember the people that were telling me, don't mask the symptom. The symptom, there's a cause why that's happening. Find out what the root cause is. That's a very holistic health. That's a holistic way of looking at this. The doctor that I mentioned, the natural doctor, whatever his title was, who was such a great influence to me, who told me, don't make the body wrong. Let your body heal itself. Let your body work things out and all of that. Don't immediately take a pill because you're getting a fever or you got to sneeze. Sometimes the body needs to sneeze. It needs to like push stuff out, right? What I don't understand is it was like a wake up call, an aha moment, if you will, when that doctor and the other people in my life at that time explained to me, no, these are Band-Aids, these drugs and stuff. These are Band-Aids. They're not curing anything. Wouldn't it be better to find out, like, why is this happening? Nip it in the bud, and then you don't have to take the drugs and problem solved. In that moment, I remember going, oh my God, it makes so much sense. No one ever told me that. I was raised in the system like we all were. But what I'm confused about is why other people who are my age or even older sometimes, or even younger people, they haven't been told that, or if they have been told that, it didn't sink, or they've just flat out decided, well, yeah, it makes sense, but I'm not going to do that. I'd rather take the drugs. I don't know why not everyone's jumping on the bandwagon and putting these pharmaceutical companies out of business. But that's my confusion. I don't know.
well, I think the big reason is a lot of times people don't want to accept the fact that they're doing it to themselves, which I think is powerful, because I always say this, and some people say like, oh, Eugene, you know, that's depressing. You shouldn't tell people that. But it's so powerful to tell someone like, hey, you're causing your own pain in life. You're doing it to yourself. But guess what? If you are doing it to yourself, you can stop doing it to yourself.
Stop and
You
do
have
something.
how empowering is that? That's like super empowering, instead of doing the whole entire, you know, like I had clinical levels of social anxiety and generalized anxiety way back in the day in college. And I went to a doctor and I'm like, well, you know, I have this anxiety, you know what I mean, et cetera, before exams and stuff of that sort, and this and that. And he's like, oh, yeah, here, just take this anxiety medication. But, you know, I grew up, luckily, like you, I just had coincidentally, not through my own doing, I kind of grew up with my grandmother in Ukraine off grid, which is, you know, we
Yeah.
just ate like pasture raised animals, for example, organic fruit, whatever, just out in nature all day. And already that kind of like in the back of my head, that just seemed wrong. I didn't know how to explain it, but it just didn't seem like the right approach to me. So just luckily I didn't do it. And I also had a good contrast because I would travel a lot like you. I went to India for a couple of months as well. And I noticed like, hey, you know, when I go to travel, like all my anxiety or the majority of it seems to disappear, you know? And
Yeah.
then I'm like, well, you know, hey, let me just put A and B together. What if I just stop working so much? Instead of doing 10 things a day, do 5 things, associate with better friends, eat a little bit better to decrease my inflammation, go to sleep at a better hour, stop having so many like coffee and stimulants of that sort throughout the day. Hey, my anxiety disappears. So maybe, hey, you know, I might have a genetic predisposition to anxiety, but I always say genetics loads the gun, but your behavior and what environment you decide to be in pulls the trigger. You know, it
Right.
kind of leaves you what's the word, allows those genetics to be expressed. But if you pick the right environment, those genetics won't be expressed to begin with. And I feel like a lot of times why those people don't change, to go back to your comment there, is I just feel they don't believe they really have the power. They feel like a lot of times there's some genetic predisposition for their high blood pressure or something of that sort, or they have like type 2 diabetes because of their genetics, or something silly of this sort. And I think it's a combination of that, and also at the same time, like it's a combination of like, hey, coming to the realization that I can't keep living the way I'm living like this and expect to be healthy, like mentally or physically. And a lot of people can't come to that realization because although it's a swamp of pathology, what most people's day-to-day existence is, it's familiar pathology. And
Yes.
God forsaken, I try something new that's not familiar, although it's actually better.
I think that's another element here, answering my own question as to why, part of everything what you said, and just generally, I know from living life, people, including me, we generally resist change. We don't like change. Change can be uncomfortable. Some of us adapt to change or initiate change easier than other people do. And for some people, it's just, it requires just effort. And it means I have to do something. It means I have to do something different. And that's outside of my comfort zone. And that requires me to put forth some extra effort to do something. And I just, I don't have it in me. I would encourage those people to look at, okay, let's extrapolate the time out. You're here now. Here's your health baseline. What does that look like in 10 years if you do nothing? And then let them answer for themselves. And then I would ask them, so what do you feel about that? how do you feel about that? And then if they make their decision, they make their decision. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. But I think it is what you said, as well as just resistance to change. Sometimes people just don't like change. They like their comfort,
Yeah, and also kind of looking at it from a different vantage point, I do hear some people say, oh, that change is hard. But hey, like, is being full of obesity, misery, and disease easy? Is that
Easy? Yeah.
easy? Waking up with gut issues all day? Is that easy? Having clinical levels of anxiety, depression, low back pain, um, just not looking your best. I mean, just the negative ripple effect it has of having like a huge belly, or stuff of this sort on every aspect of your life. I mean, that is not easy either. Some people kind of numb themselves out on it, you know what I mean? And just to be able to kind of survive and continue with the day, they numb themselves out on that. But I know deep down inside, they know they're being fake to themselves and they don't want to be living that way, because that kind of appearance is the byproduct, is a symptom of a lot of mental and physical pain in a person's life. A person doesn't look like that if they're happy and not miserable in their life. You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen. Now, of course, being ironclad and stuff like that isn't even necessary. I'm not saying you have to be like in that shape or any of that sort, or that it solves every single problem. But typically speaking, I mean, when you see a person that's like very overweight, that is a lot of people are like, oh, that's just like aesthetically unappealing or whatever, but there's nothing else wrong with it. You know what I mean? But typically, if you do like an HAQ with them, their biological markers are all over their place. Their hormones are destroyed. Their cholesterol is a mess. Their blood pressure is through the roof, et cetera, et cetera. And this is kind of like a symptom of a lot of mental and physical pain in the person's life, whether they like to admit it or not. It's just the case. And it is just the case.
On that note, and we don't have to go there, but I do want to mention it. I've met people, and I'm thinking of one person in particular who is obese. And she told me of a traumatic situation that happened to her as a child. And she remembers as a 12-year-old telling herself, I'm going to be fat and unattractive, so this will never happen to me again.
Mm-hmm.
Began to eat Twinkies and Little Debbie's or whatever, and she got fat. But that was due to a traumatic experience. Now she's working on it, but it's a whole mindset shift.
Yeah.
It's not just, okay, I'm gonna eat healthy now. It goes way, way deeper than that for some people. So I try to remember that and have some empathy, for people that might be challenged by that. So
yeah, and there's that aspect too. There are those situations where there could have been a traumatic experience, and by making yourself less attractive, that traumatic experience is less likely to happen in this person's mind,
their mind.
et cetera, et cetera. Because, oh, if I'm attractive again, I'll attract more attention, and some of it might not be the attention I'm looking for, and that could very well be the case, and happens like a lot more often. Happens a lot more often than you think. But it goes back to the point that how would this person solve their issues? By once again just concentrating on dieting and working out, by doing some boot camp or just getting on some keto or fasting program. Again, it's not going deep enough. It might produce some short-term results ups here, but overall, in the long span of time, I find there's very, very little success when a person just focuses on just working out more and just eating better in some way or another.
Yeah, and that's what I love about you and the work that you do. And for all your listeners that are here, if anybody's not worked with Eugene, this is what I love about Eugene. is you're very holistic like that as well. You look at things from a very holistic way. And I just lost my train of thought when you were just talking about, oh shit. Oh, it's like a whole mindset shift. It's like a lifestyle change in a way. You have to look, at least for me, I had to look at like, no, everything is different. Everything I do, I had to shift my way of thinking even about myself as to how I visualize myself and how I approach people. It's a whole deeper change. Now, I kind of want to, if you're okay with it, I kind of want to bring up the point that, so far what we've been talking about, I don't want people to get the impression that, oh, here I am and I'm great and I'm healthy now and smooth sailing. Dude, I got challenges. This morning I got up, I'm like, oh shit, I'm feeling draggy today. It's Friday. It was a busy week. I don't even want to go on my bike ride. I don't want to go to the gym. But I always tell myself, this is what I do. Again, this is my experience. Okay, let's say you don't go to the gym. Let's say you don't go on your bike ride. Let's say you just lay around all day, and that's fine. You can do that. What result is that going to produce for you, both physically and mentally? I can tell you right now, physically, I'm going to feel super lazy and slovenly, maybe even a little fat at the end of the day because I didn't get that adrenaline that I like. I didn't, right? And mentally, I'm not going to feel so hot. But I know from my own experience, all these years. Now, if I'm sick, that's another thing. I'm getting a fever or, something like that. Okay, toothache. All right, different story. No, I'm not going to go work out. I'm not going to be active. But what I do know from my own experience is I have that talk with myself. I have that conversation with myself, and I coach myself. Okay, let's say you don't. What does that look like? What are the results going to be? Okay, let's say you do. Let's say you just muster up the positive thinking right now, and you go put on your shoes, and you get out there and do it. What are those results going to look like? Oh, I'm going to have more energy at the end of the day rather than being more tired. I'm going to actually feel good. I'm going to feel tighter. I'm probably going to have mental clarity. I'm probably going to be in a better mood. And I'm probably going to be able to handle any challenges that come my way throughout the day, like we all face, better if I do that. And I'm going to sleep really good tonight. And my sex drive is going to be on top too. I think I'm going to go work out. I think I'm going to go exercise. I don't even call it working out, Eugene. I'm going to go. I'm going to move because sometimes it's not going to the gym. Sometimes it's just going on a hike. I live where there's mountains. I can go on a hike. I can go on a bike ride. I can go on the gym to go to the gym and tone and stay toned as well. I look at it like that. I do various things. Certain days I work out. You give me a plan. Certain days I don't work out, but I move every day. Every day I move. I do something. So I just wanted to just share that. It's not always easy. Some days I get up, I'm like, I'm not into it. I'm not feeling it. But I always have that conversation with myself. What's the risk or what's the downside? What does it look like if you don't? What's the advantage gain if you do? And then sometimes I tell myself, are you going to die? No. I mean, not from, is it going to kill you to get up right now and go for an hour bike ride? No. And you're going to feel so good when you get back. And I guarantee you 100% of the time, I'm right. I come back, I might be a little tired, but I'm feeling great. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I feel the big model you're kind of operating on is more of like a health-centered model versus a work-centered model, which is what a lot of people go off. Like for a lot of people, it's like everything comes first before them, like, oh, I'll take care of myself later, et cetera, et cetera. And I always tell people, like, it sounds really weird, especially in American culture. I don't know how it is in like Mexican culture, but it sounds really weird to tell people that. It really throws them off oftentimes to tell them, like, it benefits you to be selfish and to make sure you have your needs met first in any relationship or career path if you want that relationship or career path to last long term. Because what happens, I tell them, like, hey, if your needs aren't met first, it could be okay for like a year, 2 years, whatever, no big deal. But eventually you're going to feel that disconnect between your core values, between who you are deep down inside and who you have to keep portraying yourself to be in this environment, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's in a workplace. And once that disconnect starts and it kind of widens, the wider it is, the more like mental and physical pathology you're going to experience in your life. End of story. And no boot camp or crash diet or keto or fasting is ever going to help you. You're going to be on damage control your entire life. if for some reason you do manage to stick it out and, for example, become successful in your career, successful being measured by financial success, of course, is that metric. And I'm using that successful word very lightly there. Like, you will be miserable, you will be obese and full of disease. And there are many people at quote unquote the top like that. Okay. And what's the point then if you're full of obesity, misery, and disease all day, every day, even if you quote unquote found yourself successful, you know?
Yeah.
So I find there's that aspect. It's people aren't, they kind of like, oh, I work comes first, this comes first, I'll take care of myself. That's another question for you I have. So you turn 60, and I see this a lot in like 40, 50, 60-year-old males. I even one time had a 70-year-old male say, I'm going to start taking care of myself next month when I get A, B, and C out of the way. I'm like, dude, what next month? There might be not even a next month
No
for you,
guarantee.
you know?
No guarantee.
Yeah. So what do you have to say to those people that are always on this kind of like, oh, I'll take care of it when I get that promotion. I'll take care of it when my kid goes to college. I'll take care of it when I get all my ducks in a row and these 7 planets are perfectly aligned and the waves
Yeah.
are moving at a perfect frequency. Then I'm going to start taking care of myself. What do you have
Yeah.
to say to people like that?
Few things I'll say to that. Number one, check yourself, because are you using that as an excuse, an undercover excuse to not create the change that you actually really need and want in your life? Are you using that as an excuse to put it off? Number one. Number two, financial advisors have told me this: pay yourself first. You got to pay yourself first. The way I look at it is take care of yourself first, because no one else is going to do it. And then it's also a mind shift, a mindset shift, if you will. Oh, here's the mindset you described. Work comes first. Everyone else comes first. Then I'll take care of myself. But you're actually not helping anybody by doing that, including the people you think you're being there for. Because you cannot serve or help or be there for other people if you haven't taken care of yourself first. You cannot perform well on your job, whatever your career is, whatever you're doing. You can't do that well and with good quality if you're not taking care of yourself first. And at the end of the day, it's a hard message, and maybe some people may not agree with me on this because they're in loving relationships and they think they're going to live happily ever after. It's a myth. It was a fairy tale. There is no happily ever after. At some point, that person is going to leave you, even if it means they die and they leave you. It's all you, buddy. You are all you got, man. What are you going to do to set yourself up for good health and success? And when are you going to do it? You can talk about this shit all day long. Next month, Mercury retrograde, till the waves are better. I don't know. I've heard it all. I've even used them myself. But look, let me share a personal story with you. I got a ring on. It looks like it's a wedding ring. It's not. It's a promise ring I bought for myself 22 years ago after a big breakup. It was a hurtful breakup I had. My heart was broken. Okay? I bought myself a promise ring. It's my own engagement ring. Every time I see this, it reminds me, you're all you got, man. You're all you got. Only you will take care of you. Only you will make sure you are taken care of, that you are healthy, that you are loved. You cannot depend on anyone else to do that. And tomorrow may never get here. I may die tomorrow. I got to make the best of today. So to those people that say, when this happens, then I will do that, I don't know. Good luck with that. That doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. I wanted to mention something too shoot. I'm kind of like you. I forget sometimes, you know. I had a good train of thought to really support what you're doing, and like, damn it. Well, damn it.
All right. It'll come back.
Well,
but I have those excuses. And as a communications trainer, I use the same thing with the communications training. You can talk about it. It sounds like a good idea, but you've got to commit to yourself to doing something about it. And the taking care of other people first and all that stuff, take care of you first, because they may not be there to take care of you. What if you fall sick? What if you get one of those diseases? You get, I don't know, you know, are those people you're taking care of going to jump and drop everything to come and take care of you?
You're going to be on your own, man. And guess what? All that health insurance that you're kind of killing yourself at work for, you probably wouldn't even need if you were killing yourself at work anyways. And all you're going to get out of that is just a bunch of pills. That's it. That's all really health insurance will give you for the most part, you know, just drugs. And we talked about, you know, the shortcomings of the symptom management approach of healthcare. America's as sick as it's ever been. And
Here's, sorry.
go ahead, Lewis.
Here's the myth or the misunderstanding. I know many people think, oh, I got health insurance, right? The health insurance companies are not interested in your health. That's a misnomer. They're not insuring your health. It's not meant for you to remain healthy. It's meant for them to make profit, number one, and you can only go to them when you have an issue, when you have a problem. They're not going to work. They're going to talk. You're not going to get health insurance to pay for working with Eugene or things like that. They're not interested in your health at all. They're interested in making money and squeezing it from you how they can and not paying what they don't have to pay for. So I learned that a long time ago. Screw health insurance companies. I mean, yeah, it's nice to have. I have it. Okay, if an emergency happens, okay, I get some benefits there, but they're not interested in health.
Yeah, and a lot of times, especially, you're way familiar with this world than I am, but especially in a lot of like corporate environments, people brag about like, oh, I get this job, I get this health insurance and stuff of that sort. But I'm like, dude, okay, first of all, you wouldn't even need that health insurance if you had more time to take care of yourself, if you weren't around that toxic kind of corporate environment with that boss you don't like, for example. I mean, there's so many variables to consider here.
Working hours a day, all that, but you got health insurance.
Yeah, okay. And then good. And then right when you get sick, all you're going to get is just pills. And once again, instead of taking that rock out of your shoe, you're just kind of taking pain medication to keep it in there. Instead of realizing like, hey, if I just live like a human being, I'm not stuck behind a computer all day, and I kind of use movement as medicine, I take care of my body and respect myself. I would still recommend probably having emergency health insurance, but that's really all you need it for.
I get a car accident. I don't want to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for my treatment. Okay, the insurance kicks in then. Yeah, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and then also to touch on your point, no one being around when you're finally sick. And it is true. I mean, like, look, you could be killing yourself for a company and you don't perform for 1 week. You could be there for 20 years being perfect. I mean, 20 years, like perfect attendance, perfect work record, everything. And hey, you don't perform for like a week or two, you're out. They're going to get someone in, and guess what you're left with? Just a destroyed body, a burned out mind, and that's really it. And they're gonna boot you out and not even think twice because they're so consumed by the work and the competitive environment and the pyramid.
I live in that world. Can you imagine what you just said? What to speak of an employee like me going to my boss and saying, you know what? I need some downtime, man. I just need like 3 weeks off to just, take care of myself and get balanced again or whatever. They look at you and laugh and start counting how many vacation days you have left. Oh, you only have 5 vacation days left. You can take those. I mean, no one's interested in your well-being. They may say that. It's all bullshit. It's all BS in the corporate world. I know, I'm in it. Oh, this whole, it's all fluff and sorry, don't get me started, man. We'll stop there.
No, actually, that's a passion project of mine too. Obviously, it was a big subject of my first book. And honestly, Lewis, my story with that is when I was graduating from UCI, it was like 2009. It was at the tail end of that huge mortgage collapse that basically destroyed the economy for I don't know how many years. And everyone was just, I remember so many of my friends were even afraid of not being able to find work after college.
Yeah.
They're like, well, no one is even going to hire me. And I was telling them, I was already working as a trainer for all through UCI. And I was telling them like, well, I like only working 3 days a week. That's my thing. You know what I mean? And I like being outside and having freedom and not having a boss, et cetera, et cetera. And they would tell me, oh, that's not going to work. That's not how the world works and stuff of that sort, like you need to go the corporate route because it's safe and secure. And of course, I'm not the most confident person in the world. I'm like, well, maybe they do know something that I don't know. That's why everyone is going, not everyone, but most people are kind of more headed in that direction, Maybe they do know. Maybe there's something to it and I'm just not seeing it. You don't know what you don't know kind of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. And, but I knew from a gut instinct of how I was raised with my grandma on that off-grid farm, already what I learned about health and wellness, mental health and wellness, and also just already coaching clients. I already saw like a lot of, directors come to me from corporate work. They're like 35, 40, 45 while I was still at UCI. And I just saw what like 15, 20, 25 years of being in that environment does to you. And I just didn't want that to happen. And I'm like, even being super health conscious, it's so hard to take care of yourself in that environment and keep up with everything. You can, it is possible, but it's also possible to climb like Mount Everest every day. But how many
Yeah.
days are you going to do that in a row? I bet it's a lot easier just to go for a walk in the park instead of having to climb Mount Everest, you know? And to touch on the subject about the comment with your boss, like you come up to him, like, oh, I want 3 weeks off to kind of decompress and mellow out my burnout, and they start laughing at you. Yeah, of course. Uh, like I always say, sick people can't make healthy decisions or they wouldn't be sick.
Yeah.
And last time I checked, I used to give corporate lectures a lot as well. It is so rare to see a mentally and physically healthy person in a corporate environment. It happens from time to time. It happens. They're even doing better than I am, but it's so rare. It's 1 out of every 30, 40 employees. The rest are just mentally and physically not doing well at all. And the sad part is a lot of them, like I would have them do this HAQ, which is kind of like a general health assessment questionnaire. And a lot of them would be saying like, oh, I feel just fine, you know? But they're like in the red in almost every category. Gut issues, anxiety is through the roof, depression is through the roof, anger is through the roof,
Yeah.
musculoskeletal issues, neck pain, back pain. And they think that because I just believe in that environment, the standard for health and wellness has lowered so much that that person that would say like, I feel just fine, might be doing fine compared to the person next to him, which
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
train wreck basically across the board. So
Yeah.
it's all with perspective with the human mind, you know, it depends on, which goes back to the importance of who you surround yourself with,
Yes.
you know, which goes
Yeah.
back to your statement initially. It all comes full circle there.
What you were just talking about too, like many people, I'm not going to judge anybody's decision. We all make decisions what we feel is best for us, right? So many people have taken that road, the corporate road. I get my 401k, I get my insurance, and you know, all these things, and there's security there. There's pros and cons. The cons we've discussed. I guess the pros for some people is that sense of security. For me, now I don't report to a 9-to-5 job. I'm a trainer, and I have a lot of freedom to work from home and to work from just about anywhere I want, you know, physically training someone. So I have that advantage. That works for me to stay healthy because I have the flexibility to be able to go to the gym in the middle of the day or go for a run in the middle of the day or to prepare a really good meal for myself in the middle of the day. But I chose this. I could have chosen to be, you know, a full-on corporate guy 10 years ago and taken that route, but I knew there were pros and cons. I was tempted by that security. But then I thought to myself, okay, so at the end of the day, I die with a little security, but I'm unhealthy and I'm unhappy for the most part. That didn't work for me. So I had to figure out, how am I going to make this work, sustaining myself financially with the lifestyle that I like to live. I live simply, but yeah, I like to travel. I like to, you know, do things like everybody else does. So how do I maintain that without fully buying into and getting submerged in the whole big machine, the matrix, or whatever you want to call it, right? And so I've made it work for me. Everybody else has to figure out how they're going to make that work for them. And some people, I've come to the conclusion that some people will make that choice. No, I'm happy with the comfort zone in this corporate world. I'll retire when I'm 65 and whatever it is. And that's everybody's choices. I chose a different road. I chose the path less traveled, I think is how I worded it.
Well, I think, yeah, it's important what you just mentioned, just really being crystal clear about your core values and being
Yes.
honest to those core values, and then finding an environment that mirrors those core values. That's the key. And if you mess that one up, I could honestly tell you, you guys, no nutritionist or motivated personal trainer is going to help you. The best they could do is damage control. You can do a good job at damage control. But that's what you're doing your entire life then at that point. Just the dam is cracking, you're patching stuff up. But eventually, if it continues and the pressure is high enough, which it could be in a lot of these corporate environments, especially if you kind of go up in the ranks, it will crack, it will break, you know, and you do see.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Well, Lewis, I always say like this is slightly off topic, but still very related. I always kind of criticize like the idea of universal healthcare because once again, it just supports big pharma, like symptom management techniques. And I would say like, oh, it would be much more wise to take a small fraction of that money, which is trillions of dollars for universal healthcare. It's super crazy. And the symptom management approach has failed since 1950. It's obvious why invest more money into it is silly. But take a small percentage of that money and elementary school through high school, teach kids how to use movement as medicine, like real education, not the BS education that I got at school, like real education.
Yep.
Teach them what real food is, teach them how to manage their central nervous system, and teach them how to have nonviolent forms of communication, which is kind of an area you're focused in. So I do want to touch with you on that because it is a big concern. I do hear a lot of my clients kind of complaining about like the very conditional nature of corporate work, not feeling like appreciated. Also just the poor communication skills, especially kind of more on the engineering side, where the social skills might not be as well developed and they're just very like non-empathetic in any way. And it's just very kind of hostile type of communication. And I would say like, do you have any tips for that outside of like my tip for people just to not go into that environment? But that might be too extreme for some. But do you have any kind of like workplace communication skills to help de-stress the person to be able to have like nonviolent forms of communication, which I think every manager should be trained in, because management always sets the tone, and if you have one bad manager, everyone's going to hate working at that company, whoever is under that manager. And most of the time, sometimes you get like a client that complains about a coworker they don't like, but pretty much the bulk of the time is just complaining about a shitty boss, that treats them not well, that belittles them, doesn't hold themselves to the same standard they hold their employees to. I mean, it's endless. It can, this, everything. So
I guess the question is, how would I recommend to someone about improving their communication, nonviolent communication, or something like that, like in the workplace?
Well, first and foremost, what's your perception of that? Like, how is communication in a typical workplace? I mean, is it like, what would you rate it? How would you describe it?
I think it's hard to like paint a wide brush like that. And I interface with many different kinds of companies in many different industries, from aerospace to technology to healthcare to mom and pop grocery stores. And so I'm interfacing with all kinds. But if I could summarize or paint a wide brush and say the commonality I'm seeing is, first of all, we all have our own context of how we view and interpret life. They're not right or wrong. It's just a context. It's a lens or it's a filter on how we view and interpret things that happen in life, and it's based on past experiences, previous experiences, etc. Right? So we have to understand everyone's coming from a different headspace. So when I'm in the workplace with someone, and let's say they're being irate, or they're just generally a rude person, or their communication style is really off or rough or off-putting or any of this kind of negative stuff, the first thing that I do, and this is what we train, is stop for a moment and think to yourself, is there more to the story going on here that I'm aware of? My context is, that guy's an asshole, or she's a whatever, okay? But then I stop myself, I'm like, man, I bet you there's a whole story going on here that I'm not even aware of. What pain are they experiencing? What challenges are they experiencing? What the hell's going on in their personal life? I don't know. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to tell myself there's more to the story here that I'm aware of, and that's why they're being such a jerk. If you know what I mean, I'm just using street language here, right? Then to address it, that's a different story. So let's say, okay, I observe it, and I have that conversation with myself. Okay, something going on. I don't know what it is, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They must be challenging. Life must be challenging right now. Okay. Mm-hmm. But when it interfaces with me, and when I'm the one who's on the receiving end of that and I need to address it, like let's say it's you and me and we're colleagues on a team and you've been a jerk to me and you yelled at me or snapped at me, or I don't know, even worse. Before I come in and lay it on you and say, Eugene, you did this and that cannot happen and that's not professional, blah, 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 I'm going to go in with curiosity first. I know it sounds weird to some people, but I'm going to go in first and say, hey, Eugene, can I talk with you for a minute? Yeah, Luis, what's up? The other day, when you said that, it landed this way for me, and I'm not sure if that was your intention or not, but help me understand, man, where was that comment coming from? And then from there, I'll go. From there, I'll engage in the conversation. And if they are accusing me of some wrongdoing or that I've been off, or they basically put the mirror back up to me and says, well, it was you, and that's why I responded that way, I'm open to it, man. Help me see what I'm not seeing. Where have I been a jerk? Where have I not met the results you expected from me? Maybe I can explain, and we'll have the conversation. But at the end of the day, I understand we may not agree. We may see things so differently, and that's okay. I can still work with you. I can still get along with you. I still may have a context about you that he's not a nice guy. He's kind of a jerk. But again, there might be more to the story going on in your life that I'm not aware of. All I can do is care about me. All I can do is be accountable to myself. All I can do is show up the best person I can be for you, my colleague, for my other colleagues, and for work. And if I get offended, if I need to confront, I'll wait until, because I'm a human being like the rest of us. We have emotions. We're hardwired emotionally. Some of us more than others react emotionally. I'm one of those that reacts emotionally. I'm a very passionate. When I say emotional, I don't mean I just cry at the drop of a hat. What I mean is I'm very expressive, and I don't hide my emotions very well. So if you confront me in the workplace on something 20, 30 years ago, I might have gotten in your face about it. I was younger. I was more immature. Right now, I've learned a lot. I've grown. It's like, wait, I'll pause and I'll get curious with you. Help me understand what's going on here. Help me understand what I'm not seeing. Help me understand what it was I said that offended you or whatever it was, and try to work it out. Knowing that at the end of it all, we still may agree to disagree. You may still think the way you do, and I may still disagree with that and see it completely differently. And that's okay, because that's kind of how life is. We all see things differently. But my main goal is, if we're working together, we don't have to be buddies. We don't have to go out for drinks after work. But when I'm working with you, I want to have a good relationship with you. I want to see you succeed, and I want to succeed, and I want to help you succeed, as I would like for you to help me succeed. So given, Eugene, that you see it this way, and I see it completely differently, I see it this way, given that, how are we going to move forward together, man? Because I really do know you have good intentions for the job and for the project, as well as I do. So let's figure this out. That's how I do it. I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm guessing like the difficulty I see there is like, for example, if it's your boss and they're like, no, we're just doing it this way,
Okay.
Would then your advice be like, well, my advice would then be like, well, basically you just got to get another job, because that's just the way it's going to be done at the company, and it's the company. So it's their thing, it's not your job to come in there and change everything, et cetera, et cetera. Because a lot of times the company has its own systems, its procedures, and you're kind of just the tool that's being plugged in there to keep that machine running, which is fair, that they have their game plan, which got them to the place where they are now. But then it goes back to, once again, that disconnect in the core values. And because you're spending so much time at work, like 8-10 hours, some people 12 hours, because they take work home as well. I do feel like your real only solution at that point is to leave, honestly, because of the volume you have to spend there. You know what I mean?
I was going to say, for me, I agree, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion right away. I would have, because I'm a communication trainer, I would have the conversation with the boss first. I would go, look, here are my core values. Here's what I bring to the table. Here's the successes you've seen me bring to the table. I really like what I'm doing. If you're really sincere about it, I like being here. I like what I'm doing, but I need to make some changes. My values have shifted. I've had to have, by the way, Eugene, I've had this conversation with my boss. I can no longer work. I am not willing to work. It's not going to work that I'm working 10 to 12 hour days anymore, and certainly weekends. I just can't do it. Now, given that I've said that, you know, how do we make this work? Given that, how do we make this work? You know, it's not black or white for me. Now, if the boss comes back at that point and says, well, take it or leave it, this is the direction the company's going, you know, you're on the train or not. Great. Thank you, boss. I appreciate your candor. I appreciate your honesty. That's great information for me to know. You've given me a lot to think about. Now, the old Luis would have jumped to conclusions and quit on the spot and given him the finger. The improved Luis, who's a little older, a little more mature, and learned a little more, I end it there. You give me a lot to think about. Thank you. I'll get back with you. I'll circle back with you, and then I'll go back and have a hard talk with myself. Sounds like we've reached the end of the road with this one. It sounds like you need to get out because the situation is not going to change. So then I go back to the conversation I'm having with myself. I shared it with you earlier in our call. Given the current circumstances I find myself in, what can I do to move this in a different direction? That might mean quitting. But I had the conversation with my boss first because I wanted to give him the opportunity to say, oh, we don't want to lose you either, Luis. Let's work this out. You want to go to half-time, part-time? Let's talk about that, or I don't know, whatever it is. So yes, sometimes we have to make those hard decisions that, okay, I guess we've reached the end of the line here with this job, time to quit. But I would still, for me personally, I like to have the conversation first. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
No emotions, don't get emotional about it, just facts on the table. The boss says, this is what we need, this is what we expect, and I say, wow, it doesn't match my values. Interesting. Let's talk about what that looks like now.
Yeah. No, I meant to kind of phrase it the way you phrased it. You obviously want to talk, not like, I'm out of here. Like the second they say no, obviously not being that dramatic, you know, it's like, just throw your papers in the air and walk out. Obviously you want to chat with the person. But yes, the way you said it would be the right sequence of steps to take. And a lot of, one important thing to consider is that the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people don't understand that micro stresses are actually what the central nervous system has a very hard time dealing with. A lot of people think like, obviously like, oh, you know, like I'm not being robbed. So this is just kind of like a lot of work at work and, you know, I don't get along with this guy. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean? At the grand scheme of things. But really, if you look at the way the central nervous system has evolved, it's actually evolved to deal with those dramatic stresses very well, because our brain, as you know, is encased in a skull. It doesn't see the outside world. It uses its 5 human senses to gather information. And your brain thinks like you're just some caveman stuck in the forest still. Your DNA hasn't really changed in the 200,000 years the Homo sapien has been around. And in the 2+ million years, the 28 human species that have come and gone, and now there's only one remaining, which is us, basically, the Homo sapien, hasn't really, in terms of the Homo sapien DNA, it hasn't really changed that much. So it's evolved to basically deal with, like, you go hunt a mammoth, it's super stressful, you might lose one guy in your tribe, but then nothing happens for like 3 months. You just chill out in the forest, you're fishing, you're basically on vacation. You know, you're socializing, you're definitely out in nature all day, you're drinking great water, et cetera, and then you got to go for a hunt again. But today, you might not have, unless you're, of course, in a war-torn country or something of that sort, you might not have that huge macro stress, you know, of like hunting a mammoth, but you have an endless list of micro stresses. Got to get in traffic, got to deal with that coworker you don't like, got to deal with that boss you don't like. Now I have all these inflammatory foods when I go out to eat with my coworkers at lunch. Now I got to drive back and hit traffic again. Now I got all these bills. Now I got this kid. Now I got this. Now I got that. And it's actually those small stresses, what I refer to as micro stresses, that are extremely damaging on your body. And going a little bit further, if you have that disconnection in your core values of who you are, and then how many, basically the more masks you wear, the bigger that gap. Yep. And so what I was getting at, if a person is working that job and they're not getting those core values met because of the 10 to 12 hours of exposure 5 days a week, and basically it's like all day, especially if you're driving to work, because you're thinking about work while driving there, you're at work, then you're thinking about work when driving back. So it's basically like all 5 days during the week. And if you get that part wrong and you have that gap, and the wider the gap, I mean, it's not going to turn out well for you, you know?
And talking about neuroscience, in addition to what you just said, you probably know this better than I do, and you maybe got data to back it up. I'm that guy you just described, and now there are unresolved issues from the day. Maybe it's an issue between you and me, the coworkers, right? and I don't address that issue, it stays in my brain. And even when we're sleeping, research, the science has shown we still problem solve, and that part of our brain is still active even when we're sleeping, until I address it, until I tackle it, or whatever the challenge is. So then there's that. You take that shit home with you, and then you're sleeping. Well, it affects your sleep. So it's just it's a no-win game.
Yeah, and then combine that with most people are in the wrong relationships too. So then they have that story gap when they get home also, It's like, dude, and you wonder why 9 out of 10 American adults are now metabolically unhealthy and just a complete mess, like physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And it goes back to all these little things that are overlooked. People are just focusing on these big picture things, but hey, it's all these little things that that act as a glue to keep everything together. Stuff of that sort. And if you don't get this stuff right, I promise you guys, you're not gonna be able to optimize your mental and physical health. I promise you. Some of you may be good at damage control for a long while sometimes, but that's it. You're just in damage control mode. You're not, what's the word, prospering, or like when you're really doing well. What's that word?
Thriving, prospering?
Thriving, yeah. You're definitely not going to be thriving. That's for sure. Guaranteed. Or sometimes maybe there's like 4 standard deviations away outlier that can prove me wrong. But I'm pretty sure you guys, I'm pretty sure I can find someone that smokes like 2 packs of cigarettes a day and died at 100 too. That doesn't mean it's going to happen to the rest of the not 999 people out of that group of 1,000, stuff of that sort. So the stuff we're saying is pretty damn powerful. And it goes overlooked so much. In fact, like I never, outside of like maybe Paul Chek or a few others like Stefan Walensky or stuff like that, I never really hear anyone talking about it like this. You know what I mean? Right. In terms of solving it from the root up, instead of just constantly like battling one symptom after another and never stopping to ask yourself, like, why am I getting all these damn symptoms?
Yeah. Right now in the corporate world, and I'm involved in it. I'm not ashamed to say I'm involved in it, but I'm currently working on, does this match my values? How to deal with stress in the workplace. It's not how to rid stress in the workplace.
Yeah.
The whole dynamic of the way we work is, yes, you're stressed out because of everything that's going on at work in the corporate world, and now it's exacerbated since the pandemic. So let us, your company that you work for, let us help you manage that stress.
I'm telling you, Lewis, like well, it's for the most part Western world, but Americans can't think outside of symptom management. It's just not in their consciousness to even think of problem solving outside of symptom management. It's so crazy because I don't know. It's like so obvious to me, like a 2-year-old child will understand, like, hey, if you have a rock stuck inside your shoe,
pull it out.
Take the shoe out, take the rock out, put the shoe back in, walk with comfort.
Yeah.
But now you have all of these educated, I say that super loosely, educated people like walking with that rock inside their shoe and taking painkillers.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, like, and they
onto their foot to ease the pain of that rock.
Yeah. and they freaking have kids that unfortunately they teach the same belief system to. And a lot of people, especially with the whole COVID thing, they're like, oh, virus this, virus that. A belief system that doesn't facilitate health conscious choices is the most dangerous virus of all, because ideas spread from mind to mind, just like a virus spreads from person to person. And a belief system that doesn't focus on mental and physical health will kill the host eventually too, just like a virus, like COVID or whatever. So that is the most, imagine how many deaths happen. We got 800,000 Americans dying of super preventable heart disease every year. Right? It's actually probably close to 1 million now. 50%, 50% of Americans develop cancer within their lifetime, and half of those die from it. Close to like now 100,000 people are dying every year from super preventable type 2 diabetes. I mean, it's so easy to not become type 2 diabetic. You have to purposely abuse yourself for so long to make that happen. It's just so easy to avoid. And then you got almost 130,000 Americans dying of strokes every year. And this whole entire COVID deal too. Like I checked a few days ago, it looks like 1 million Americans have died right now of COVID. Now, close to 85% of those were obese and had various other health issues already. So you could easily say, like, hey, 850,000 of those deaths could have been prevented if the mind virus, the belief system that doesn't facilitate health conscious choices, was dealt with, which
That's
is the
right.
real virus of all, you know?
Totally agree. Yep, I totally agree. And you know, that goes back to me, in my mind, leads me back to the beginning of our conversation today, where I was saying, like, I made choices for myself. I made the decision, I'm not going to go down that road. I'm going to go down this road. And I had other people to model what that road looks like, including you, Eugene. I'm grateful that you are one of those persons on the path that points in the right direction. Hey, you know, keep going that way. Honored that you've been a part of that. But what a point I wanted to make was, recently, it's happened before where people have asked me this, and it recently happened, and I had to laugh, and I wanted to share it with you and your listeners. Somebody I haven't talked to in a while. So what are you doing? What are you up to? I'm like, I'm chasing summer, living in Puerto Vallarta. I walk to the beach every day. I ride my bike. I work from home. I make great meals, and I sleep really good all day. And sometimes I surf, and it's great. And they go, wow, living the life. I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I guess living the life, however you describe that, but I made decisions. I made choices. You can do the same thing too. It's not like something magical happened. It's not like, I mean, I had to make decisions, and I had to make some difficult decisions, and I had to move and do things that were uncomfortable. But now, you know, I'm living within my value zone, right? This is what I want. So just wanted to share that.
Yeah. And also, how do you feel, two things I wanted to ask you. So how do you feel actually moving to Mexico, once again, changing that environment? And also, how do you feel, because I'm trying to encourage a lot of my clients, to the ones that don't want to disconnect from corporate, at least try to work remote, which saves about 10 hours a week, which is enough time to really take care of yourself and have that good balance. How do you feel transitioning to a remote, mostly remote work, plus moving to, are you like an expat now in Mexico, or?
I am. I'm a resident.
Okay, cool.
Residency here. I live here. I rent an apartment here, and I'm an official resident of Mexico.
Yeah, and how do you feel those two things had an impact on creating lasting change for you? Like, do you feel like you could have sustained that change if you stayed in the same environment you were in before you came to coaching with me?
Wow. Okay. Let me back up. I want to go back to the original two questions. One was about the Mexico. What was the other one though? About being, for those who don't want to leave the corporate world.
Your experience with how working remote has allowed you to create lasting change.
Yeah, let's go with that first, and then I'll go into Mexico, and then I'll answer that third question about would I have seen any results had I not taken that path, or whatever the question was. So, working remotely for me was a catch-22. It's a love-hate still. I'll be honest with you. I can't stand sitting in the same goddamn place all day long. I hate it. I never worked in a cubicle. I don't want to work in a cubicle, and now since the pandemic, I've been forced to sit or stand. I have a standing desk. That's another hint, another clue. Get yourselves a standing desk. Makes a big difference. It's a game changer. Right now, I'm at a different area, so I'm sitting down right now. But point is, I didn't like sitting down in front of the computer. I didn't like being home all day. Frankly, I don't like doing webinars. I'd rather be in the classroom with people, moving around, shaking hands. That's what I love doing. Now, the pandemic forced a change. I had to have the conversation with myself. Given the current circumstances that I don't have any control over, what can you do to make the best out of this, to really get some good out of this, okay? So what I had to do was set a schedule for myself, because with working remotely, your boundaries are all now erased, because your office is at home and people feel like they can call you anytime and message you at any time with everything. So you really got to set your boundaries, and I had to do that because I was working 14 hours a day. I had to, here's what I did, Eugene, since I started working from home. I removed my email, my work email application, the Outlook application for my work email. I removed it from the other inboxes that I have for my personal email, so that every time I open up my phone, I don't see work emails. I have to specifically go get them. They don't just appear and pop up. That was number one. Number two, I set my schedule. It was hard for me to do, but now everybody in my company knows. Don't count on me showing up online before 8 p.m. and by about 3 p.m., don't count on me. I'm offline. Now, I'm a single guy and I don't have kids. We're discriminated against subliminally. What I mean by that is, I got a lot of people I work with that'll say, ooh, I got to leave the meeting early. I got to take my kids to soccer. Ooh, I got to pick up the kids from soccer practice. Oh, I got to take the kid to the babysitter. Us single guys with no kids, we don't have those excuses. So I jokingly tell they laugh at me when I say this. I tell them, I got to go out and play with my kid at 3 o'clock. At least you don't have any kids. Yes, I do. It's my inner kid. And he needs to play.
I was just going to say that.
I know that about myself. I need to play, Eugene. I have to have fun. Surfing, body surfing, riding my bike, dancing, whatever it is. And so I had to make those hard stops for myself. Otherwise, people will take advantage of it, or you will lose your own boundaries. And so I set my own boundaries. Now, the pros that I got out of it was, okay, now I don't have to travel as much as I love traveling. It's unhealthy. Let's admit it. Sleeping in different beds, eating all kinds of different food for 3-4 days in a row, not good. Now I don't have to travel as much. That's a pro. The second thing is I can shop for myself. I'll tie in Mexico with this. I don't know if it's organic or inorganic, but it's fresh, good vegetables. The fruits are juicy. The radishes are big and red, and it's farm food, man. I go right here to one of these farmers markets and I get some really good food and I cook for myself. I can eat for myself. Sundays in Mexico, nothing happens, man. Stores are closed. People are just with families and relaxing and eating. I love that kind of a culture. I created that for myself. So working from home, moving to Mexico, I took advantage of it. I ran with it to make it work for me. I got out of the United States. My cost of living, my expenses went down 60% from Laguna Beach. I went from paying $1,000 a month for a little shit ass studio by the beach in Laguna Beach to a brand new fully furnished condo, all utilities paid, for about $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
So Mexico was good for me, not for everybody. I'm Latino. I speak Spanish. I come from a Mexican background, so it's not foreign to me necessarily. But let's admit, I was raised in the United States. I'm really not Mexican. I am a U.S. American, but I come from this culture, right? So I know how to make it work. What was the third question? I forgot. The third one was...
Oh, so you had a dramatic change of environment,
okay.
which I feel... Not every time. I hate to say it and phrase it in absolutes, because when it comes to mental and physical health, there are never any absolutes. But a lot of times I see, like, if people embark on like a fat loss journey and they are successful with that journey, but never change the environment they're in or dramatically change the environment they're in before they started that journey, the chances of relapse and weight regain is extremely high. And just general statistics would say it's about 80 to 90%. So do you feel that environment change is another aspect that created that lasting change for you, that makes it easy for you to sustain that lasting change, rather? Because remember, it's all about making the journey easy enough to make it sustainable. That's huge, you know? You don't want to be climbing Everest, which is possible. You want to be walking at the park, you know? That's kind of my thing, so.
I would say yes. I think now that I look back on it, as I mentioned earlier, and again, I'll admit, I have down moments. I'm a human being. Sometimes I don't have initiative or whatever, right? We have our days. I would be more inclined in Laguna Beach, where I have somewhat of a community of people I've known for many years, given that it does get cold from my perspective in the winter, I would be more inclined to eat less than healthier foods or the foods that are probably not best for me. I would be more inclined to go out and have a glass of wine with other people. I'd be more inclined to, and again, I'm looking at it in retrospect, I just wouldn't be as active as I am here. So again, what I mentioned earlier is I made the decision of where do I want to live where I'm the healthiest? It's in a hot tropical environment where I can sweat and just be hot all the time. I like that. So now that I've moved here, it allows me, as I said earlier, I sleep less, I eat lighter, I eat less, and I'm way more active, burning way more calories, and my stress is decreased. So yeah.
Damn, Louis, you're kind of selling me on Mexico here, man.
Hey, just don't be a journalist, don't be a priest. You might get killed. Other than that, you're good. I'll be like
a fitness Jesus. I just
but
Lewis, you mentioned two like super important things. So one is um, it's so weird how many like Americans I run into that feel guilty like when they rest or when they kind of act like a kid again. You know what I mean? And you mentioned like, oh, I have my inner child to take care of. Like I
Yep.
have so many even people on coaching calls that are like, I tell them to take like a 20-minute nap midday every other day. Like for example, and they're like, oh man, I never thought of that in the past. I always felt so guilty when I did that. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't like I was underperforming at the office. I even remember one time I trained a really talented female computer programmer, and she was more of kind of like health conscious mindset, and she would come and train with me on her lunch break, on her lunch break. And she would be getting messages from her boss saying how bad that looks to the team, that she was working out and taking care of herself when they had this deadline. And the team was like, she should be setting an example of like, if you're not dying for your job, you're not doing your job kind of mindset. And it's like so ridiculous. And honestly, like I had to struggle a little bit fighting that part off of me too, you know, feeling a little guilty for resting,
Yep.
et cetera, et cetera. It was a tough fight because it was part of my type A personality as
Yep.
well. But I looked at it in one point, in one perspective. I remember because I didn't know any better, at one point I worked for like a year and a half or almost 2 years, like 6 days a week coaching people. I was getting all these clients. All my friends were also working these crazy hours. And I just thought like that's the thing adults do, you know? That's just what you do when you're an adult. And if you're not doing that, you're like not an adult, not a productive citizen, not contributing to your tribe and culture. But then
Yep.
at one point, you know, I kind of found myself with a little bit more anger issues than I liked. I was able to kind of control them on the surface, but it still made me feel uneasy and tense inside. I had it started developing anxiety issues. I felt rushed during my workouts all the time. Like, oh, I got to work out really quick because in 45 minutes, I got to be back to another appointment and stuff of this sort. Anyways, everyone knows this feeling. They had it at one point in their life or another. And then at one point, after feeling so crappy for so long, I felt kind of fake inside because I'm a health professional telling people not to work so much. And I was working a lot myself.
Make your own
But B, I looked around and I'm like, wait a minute, like all these people are like not happy, tired, like very haggard looking. They feel like shit, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, why am I doing the same thing?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, that instantly hit me right there. You know how stupid that was to kind of almost be under that kind of trance, like that childhood trance of like, you know, trying to please mommy and daddy through being overly productive, you know, or overly, et cetera, et cetera. And even feeling guilty when like taking a 20-minute nap. And I hear that quite often, actually, you know?
Yeah. The little voices in our heads. I got that little voice too. Can I speak to that? You know, a couple of things. First of all, there's that voice, that tape recorder that goes on and on. You're not doing enough. You should be doing ... Fill in the blank. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. I think that comes, I'm speaking for myself, that comes from the culture that we just grew up in the United States. It's a, you know, it's just go, 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 do. Now what? What's the next thing? Better, improved, all that shit. Okay. There's that. Then in my world now, in the corporate world and with leadership training and all of the leadership people that are out there now doing all this stuff, there's this constant, you know, goal setting and achieving those goals and not resting. And it's just like, oh my God, shut up everybody. And just, I never feel guilty for taking a nap, and I take them. I took a half an hour nap yesterday and the alarm went off and I like, oh, bummer. And then I got up and I made some tea and I got back to work. I don't feel guilty about that at all. Everybody should. And I don't feel guilty about playing because it goes back again to when I showed you this ring. I made a commitment to myself. No one's going to take care of you, Luis. That's me. No one's going to take care of you. You got to play. I already know I need to play. I need downtime. Sometimes I need a nap. I'm going to take it because you know why? I'm going to do better work. I'm going to be a better trainer. I'm going to be more productive. My quality of work is going to be better. I'm going to be a better friend to you, a happier friend to you. You're probably going to want to hang out with me even more or better than you did if I'm a grouchy, you know, whatever. So I got over that. The voice, the tape recorder still plays. Like yesterday, laying down for a nap. Oh, don't forget, you got to do this, you got to do that. Maybe you should cut this down to a 10-minute nap. I say, no, screw that. I'm taking my 30-minute nap. I'll get that. No one's dying here. We're not curing cancer here. And I ask that question to any of the people stuck in the corporate matrix right now listening to this. What, are you curing cancer? Are you saving lives? If so, great, don't sleep. If you're not saving lives, take your nap, man.
Yeah. It's like, don't worry, the paper shuffling will be there tomorrow,
It will
you know?
be there, believe me. So
And
yeah.
if you're not going to do it, they'll find someone else in like 2 seconds to do it for you, you know? Which is another thing that adds stress, because people do have this feeling like I'm so easily replaced, you know? And that's why I have to give up on my core values and kill myself for my job, because if I don't, my boss, AKA daddy, will be upset with me, and he won't give me my allowance that I need to spend, AKA paycheck, to spend on whatever I want, or et cetera, et cetera. And I just feel a lot of people that put up with that. Also, I feel they had a lot of that in their family life growing up. You know, that conditional, like, you must perform for me to love you kind of relationship. And once again, they're looking for those familiar patterns, although they may be patterns of mental and physical pathology that are not serving them, like, in most positive ways, you know? Stuff of that sort.
I wanted to, on absolutes, you mentioned absolutes a little while ago, and I mentioned don't paint a wide brush. I don't want to paint a wide brush about the corporate world or leaders in the corporate world, because there are some gems there. I do know and work with leaders that will say, take your time off, take care of yourself, please take care of yourself. And they do the same. They take care of themselves. Far and few between in my experience, but they are out there. Things are slowly changing. Now, in terms of your surroundings, in terms of shifting I forgot how you worded it a few minutes ago, but you were asking, like, when I moved to Mexico, did that help things? Or in a way, it's the same thing in the corporate world. Who do you choose to associate with? Are there people in your company, in your team, or somewhere that kind of think like you, that maybe are health-minded, that maybe are on the same page with you? You establish relationships with them and you support one another. I've seen that happen in the workplace as well. So to me, it's not a black or a white, on or off kind of a thing. It's like, okay, how can we make this work? Given that I may not be able to quit my corporate job tomorrow and just take naps like Luis, you know, what can I do? You know, what can I do to maintain my health, maintain my sanity while I have to work?
Yeah. Well, I feel you mentioned another very important thing. Well, first of all, one phrase that actually changed my perspective very well is from like my uncle. He's like your super stereotypical type A personality. And he was like a special forces guy. He has a PhD, has a law degree now too. And at one point he started kind of developing like health issues and this and that. And eventually he told me like, well, you know, I came to the realization that, you know, in my life, if I finish like 10 things or 5 things, the universe wouldn't even notice. But at least with 5 things, like, I could live a life of peace and enjoy my day-to-day existence, instead of having like a knife to my throat and being on deadline after deadline with having to finish 10 things in my life, for example. And that kind of hit me. He's like, well, you know, that's true, because right now, even if the universe exploded, or even if the Earth exploded, the universe wouldn't even notice anything's missing. So I'm pretty sure not much is going to change if I accomplish 5 things versus 10 things in my life alone, and stuff of that sort. So objectively speaking, I don't think there's really anyone that could kind of deny that kind of objective reality of how minuscule or tiny, like, we are in this huge universe that really no one even knows how, like, massive it really is. Or even if the human mind can consciously, like with Donald Hoffman's work, even if the human mind has the capability to consciously perceive and see the universe for the reality it really is, that's a whole nother kind of enigma going on there. Because as much as people kind of like fall into this like science trap, he's a scientist, he's a doctor, he knows everything. At the end of the day, even the most advanced scientists don't even know how human consciousness forms. And even at that level, they don't even know how basically we perceive and experience the entire world as a whole. And if that kind of hypothesis is incorrect, like, any kind of measurement tool you use would have to be put in question in terms of how accurate is it at measuring the outside world and stuff of that sort.
Yeah, totally get it, man. It's really interesting stuff.
But another important aspect is you mentioned you worked remote, and how much your finances has gone down by having the flexibility of moving to a place that's nice, but still like a lot cheaper. So I feel that is a challenge for a lot of people because, like, for example, if you're living in Laguna Beach now, a 1-bedroom is like 2.5K a month or something like that.
5. Yep.
Or maybe probably even higher in some areas. I don't know the prices there, but just like everything tends to be expensive. But for example, when I was in India, in Mumbai, I ran into like a retired firefighter guy. and he was living there off his pension, which wasn't that much. I think he told me it was like 3,200 or 2,900 US dollars a month. But over there, that makes you like pretty much rich, you know?
Yeah.
And he
Yep.
had like a nice apartment, like a cook.
Yep.
I remember when I was there in 2013, like a taxi that drives you around all day will cost like
Yep.
like $20. And they wait for you outside of the restaurant. They don't even go anywhere.
I'll take you shopping
So
4 hours for $20.
yeah, and I feel like, hey, you know, that's why I encourage some people like, dude, you gotta like not lower your standards, but maybe try transitioning to remote work and then move to like I hate to say cheaper state because it indicates like indirectly that it's lower quality, but there's so many high quality neighborhoods in quote unquote like cheaper states that the house is still like 30-40% cheaper than it would be of the same house in like Laguna Beach, for example, you know? And the quality of living is still very high. The food, because of the centralized food system, the food is all the same. So it's not like you're missing out there. In fact, like I could honestly say the amount of biodynamic farms in Texas is like far greater than anything you're going to find in California. So there are those aspects too. You think California, richer state, they might have better quality food. But I would say in terms of accessibility, actually the food is much better in Texas. Now, whether Texans actually take advantage of that or not is a whole different story. But it's there, you know, for people like me that are consciously aware of the benefits of having that kind of food in your life. And yeah, they all deliver, you know, 2-day delivery to your house, or you could even go, a lot of them are in driving distance, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But that's one of the benefits of working remote. It's like, hey, you know, you're a computer programmer, you're making 150, 200 a year. That might not be that much in San Francisco, you know, but hey, you take that salary and move to Thailand, or even move to like a different state in the States, that's like a tremendous amount of money, you know? Oh, Lewis might be breaking up, but it's okay because, oh, we got Lewis back.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened. You there?
Nope, yeah, it's kind of a little shaky, but that's okay. We're kind of coming to the end here. I was telling people in terms of sometimes like the financial pressure people are under, that can hold them back from transitioning. But I was telling them like, oh, you know, if you go remote, and move to a cheaper place, you're still basically making roughly the same salary, but your expenses are dramatically lower. So once again, it decreases these micro stresses.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah. Exactly. And it doesn't have to be Mexico. Like you said, there's other states or even regions hidden in California that are cheaper. But what I decided to do, if this is a helpful hint to anybody else, I decided to move to Mexico where the cost of living is way cheaper, but the standard of living for me is way higher. Number one. Number two, I changed my residency from California, which has a very high tax rate, to Nevada. I have a friend that lives in Nevada. They let me use their address. I'm now gaining $1,000 a month more that was going to state California taxes. They were taking out almost $500 a paycheck out of my check. Okay, so there's all these little things that you can do, like you said, that will help alleviate that, the micro stresses. Yeah. All that helps.
Yeah. All right, Lewis. Well, it was good catching up. Do you have like any like final statements, especially for those like 50, 60-year-olds out there that are kind of like, I'll do it next month. I promise I'm going to start taking care of myself when we start finally colonizing other planets. Then I'll do it. You know, I don't know. I don't know what goes through some people's minds. Dude.
The way I look at it is how I have the conversation with myself to say that once again, I look and I think to myself, how quickly did the last 10 years go by? I can remember 2012 like it was yesterday. That was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. We all know as we get older, time goes by or seems to go by faster. So the last 10 years of my life went by really quick. The next 10 years are going to go by even a little bit quicker. And the next thing you know, I'll be 70. I got to get on this shit now. There is no time to waste. Get on it now. The clock's ticking. You owe it to yourself. Take care of yourself first. That's what I would say.
Yeah. And hey, what's the worst that can happen? You'll look sexy. You'll be happy. You'll be healthy. You'll have a strong sex drive. Doesn't sound too bad for me, you know?
And last thing I'll say, I wanted to say it earlier, and I don't want to get too metaphysical or new agey or anything, but I'll say it. I have found in my experience let's say, for example, I got fired. I don't think it'll happen, but let's just say all of a sudden they said thanks, and it was nice. It was a good ride. You're done. It might, it might suck at first, but new doors open. Other opportunities open up. When that door closes, now suddenly I have all this time free to do other things, to focus on other things, and more opportunities come my way. So don't let the fear hold you back.
Yeah, and that happens way more than you think. Like I just had a client that quit some job, and he was like, he didn't like it for the longest time, and he thought he was not gonna like find a new place. And he's kind of like an occupational therapist and stuff of this sort. And he quit. Well, actually, he had an injury, and they laid him off because he took too long off to recover from that injury.
See?
And basically, he got out. He was able to find, guess what? Like when you spend 8 hours a day looking for your dream job instead of working a job you hate, you find one, ironically. So he found one. Right? So he found one like 2 weeks later, like that. And now this place is like feeding him endless amount of clients, where the other place was barely trickling any clients his way. And he's like, man, I should have done this forever ago. I don't know why I stuck that out for so long. And I hear those stories like all the time. It's happened. It happened to many people I know too. It's like, dude, don't downplay yourself. You're not dumb. If you just spent like 8 hours a day working to build your dream life instead of 8 hours a day. Okay, look, you're making a salary being miserable. Imagine how much money you can make being not miserable.
Right? Yeah.
So, I mean, there you go. Okay, Louis, dude, it was nice catching up. I feel we're like really on the same vibe these days with a lot of life perspectives. And it's always nice to run into people like that. And I'm happy that we kept in touch over the years and stuff of that sort. So, and thanks for setting the example for me, kind of showing like, see, it's possible for people to do this, and live a health conscious life into their 60s and stuff of that sort, and stuff. So you're kind of a role model for me too.
I'm grateful to you. I said it earlier, I'll say it again. You're one of the many people on that path that are just pointing me in that direction. I watch some of your shows. I was going to say your shows. These things, I watch them. I'm inspired by you constantly, because I think for me, I constantly need that re-energizing, that inspiration, especially in the low moments. So I appreciate you for that. I'm glad we were able to connect here. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Eugene.
Cool. All right, Lewis. And everyone on the call, thank you. It's good to see you guys. And everyone, have a good weekend, okay?
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.